Hi everyone, it's Sierra, and in this video I'm going to be sharing my birth story. So it's been 2 weeks now since I gave birth to my son Liam, which, by the way, my sister got me this super cute sweatshirt from Etsy. It says Mama, and then on the sleeve it says my baby's name, Liam. How cute is that? So anyway, right now he is taking a nap with his dad on the couch, but he might be in this video at some point, I don't know. But I'm very excited to share my birth story. I also really hope that I don't start crying in this video because, like I said, it's been 2 weeks now, and honestly, just up until like a couple days ago, like I'm already getting teary, of course, but I could not even think about or talk about my birth without just bursting into tears. And I did have like a positive experience, so I want to start with that. So I don't know if it's just like the hormones or what, but I kind of feel like I had a little bit of PTSD from my birth experience, which I was very surprised by because I was only expecting to have like birth trauma if I had like a traumatic experience or like an emergency situation. And so I did have a natural birth in a birth center. So I guess you could say it was unmedicated. I did use nitrous oxide, so I don't know if that like really counts or not, but I did not have an option to get an epidural. So I'll get into why I chose to do it that way, but I just want to preface this video by saying I did have a positive experience. However, I am going to be very honest in this video, and I am going to be like using words like pain because I know in a lot of these natural birth videos, women will say it's not pain, it's pressure or intensity, and for some people that might be the case, but for me it was level 10 pain, like the most pain I have ever experienced in my entire life. And it was also very long, at least I thought it was very long. I was in labor for about 16 hours, and I know, you know, sometimes people are in labor for days and days, but when you have like no pain medication, that feels like a very long time. Okay, so really quickly, why I chose to give birth in a birth center over a hospital is because if you are not familiar with me or my YouTube channel, we struggled with infertility, and so it took us about 2 years to get pregnant. And so for my like fertility treatments, I guess you could say, I went through this birth center. And the reason I did that is because they do everything like very holistically. So we did like natural family planning, and yeah, they just have like a more natural approach to fertility and childbirth and all of those things. So in doing that, I just started learning more and more about childbirth, and I was learning about the benefits of having a natural birth and avoiding interventions. So I was really like on board with that because I personally wanted to try to avoid a C-section if I could, just because I have never had a surgery before, and so that just seemed like really scary to me. And I know like the recovery is or can be a lot more difficult than having like a vaginal birth. And with my husband's job, like he only took like a week off after our baby was born, so I just knew that would be like really difficult for me. So my biggest reason for wanting to do a natural birth was to avoid as many interventions as possible, to have as safe as possible of a delivery, and to have a healthy baby. And then the reason that I wanted to do that in a birth center rather than a hospital was because it just seems like in a birth center they're like a little bit more patient, and sometimes in a hospital, if things are taking a long time, like I feel like in my situation they were, sometimes the hospital can like want to do things to like speed that up, and I really didn't like want that pressure. And also I just felt like more comfortable in the environment of the birth center. It's like a more relaxing feeling, whereas I just personally feel like the hospital is a little bit more stressful, and I am someone who's like very sensitive. I'm just a very sensitive person in general, but like my environment like really affects me. So that is why I chose the birth center, and overall I am very happy with that decision. So like I said, I felt like I had some like birth trauma from my experience, but now that I've had time to like process it more, I'm like very happy with my experience. Okay, so if I'm looking at my phone at all in this video, it's because I had to write out everything that happened, and I did that like a couple days after I had my baby, because I was already starting to forget the details, which I've heard that the female brain does that to continue to reproduce, which is wild. But yeah, I was like already starting to forget, and even right before I started filming this, I was just kind of talking through it with my husband to make sure I wasn't forgetting anything, and there were even more details where I was like, oh my gosh, I completely forgot that that happened. So anyway, I have it all written down here if I need to refer back. And then I'm also going to post this on my blog. I might not get into like the nitty-gritty details in this video just because, like I said, I really don't want to start crying, but I will post those like in the blog post, so you can check that out if you want to, and I'll link it down below. Okay, so my baby's due date was September 19th. So on that day, I had my 40-week appointment with my midwife, and she checked me, and I was dilated to like 1.5 centimeters, and I wasn't really having any signs of labor. I did have some Braxton Hicks like probably a week before that, but then I never had any other signs. And so once I told her that and she checked me, she said it's, you know, very common for first-time moms to go up to a week or two past their due date, and so she said not to be surprised if I was still pregnant like a week later. And we went ahead and scheduled a 41-week appointment where they were going to do an ultrasound just to check on the baby and make sure that he was doing okay. I wasn't really surprised that I hadn't gone into labor yet, because I had a full to-do list every day leading up to having my baby, which I'm just kind of crazy in that way, but I feel like there was just so much stuff that we needed, not that we needed, but that I wanted to get done before the baby came, like just things around our house and whatnot. And so I feel like I really wasn't like super relaxed up until that point. So after the 19th, I had literally nothing to do, because I was like, everything just needs to be done by his due date, and then after that I'm not planning anything. And so the next day, September 20th, was like the first day that I had really just relaxed and did nothing. So I basically just laid in bed that whole day watching TV, and I just remember I was starving that day. So I would get so many snacks and I just would not be full. I was still just like so hungry. And then I also fell asleep and took a super long nap, and when I woke up from that nap, I was like, okay, I think that my body is getting prepared to go into labor. And so my husband got home probably around like 7 o'clock that night, and we had some steaks in the fridge, and I was like, we need to grill these steaks because I am so freaking hungry. I cannot get full. So we started grilling those steaks on the back deck, and I'm sitting out there with my husband as he's getting our dinner ready, and all of a sudden I start to feel like a little trickle, like I could have like peed my pants. And so I said, hang on, I need to go to the bathroom. And like I went to the bathroom, and then like more liquid was coming out. And so I wasn't like really sure if that was my water breaking or not. I mean, it seemed like it could have been, but I just went back out on the deck and I was like, something is happening, I don't know what, but I think my water might be breaking. And then it seemed like for an hour it just like slowly kept trickling out like a little bit more, so I had to just like keep running to the bathroom. And once we were finished with dinner and we were cleaning up, like big gushes of fluid started coming out, so I had to go and put on like an adult diaper. And I was like, okay, my water is officially breaking, like this has to be it because I cannot control this. So at that point my husband started getting like a little panicky, and he was like, okay, we got to make sure we have everything packed. He was like running around getting all his stuff packed, and I was like, okay, you need to chill because this is probably going to take hours and hours, and like we don't need to rush to the birth center right now. Like I think this is going to take a while. And I wanted to take a shower and curl my hair, which is just hilarious to think about now because I looked seriously haggard the entire time I was giving birth. But I really wanted to and thought I would make like a birth video, but there is absolutely no way that I could have done that, just because, like I said, I was in such intense pain. But also I was like pretty much naked the entire time. I mean, I had on a bra, but that was it, and there's like no way I could have posted that on the internet. So after we cleaned up dinner, I took a shower. I did actually curl my hair. So I was sitting in here in our bedroom on my birth ball, like those big exercise balls, and I was curling my hair. And as I was doing it, I would feel a contraction come on, and I would have to stand up and like lean over on my bed, like put my hands on the bed and lean over, and that was like how I was getting through the contractions. And so then I think it was around 9 o'clock. Yeah, so at 9 o'clock I was having like pretty intense contractions. So I feel like my labor came on really fast and furious, because around that time I was like, okay, I think that we should probably start timing these because it seems like they're like pretty consistent. So we started timing them, and they were already like 4 minutes apart, which my paperwork from the birth center said to actually go to the birth center once your contractions were like 4 minutes apart. The contractions had to last like 1 minute, and you wanted to see that pattern for like 1 hour. And we hadn't even like called the midwife yet, and I was like, I feel like I already need to go there. So we called the midwife and like told her, you know, what was going on and that we were probably going to be coming in at some point that night. And so she just was talking to us on the phone, and I was kind of telling her what I was experiencing. And she was like, okay, I think you're still in early labor, so why don't we check back in sometime between 3 and 5 a.m. and then we can decide like when you should come in. So I remember in that phone call thinking, oh my gosh, how long is this going to take? Because I'm like already in a lot of pain. So Kevin and I were like, okay, we better try to get some sleep because this could be a long night. And my husband had just like worked all day, so I really wanted him to get some sleep because I knew I was gonna really need him once things picked up more. So we both lay down in bed, and I could only lay down for like 30 minutes, and I started feeling like I just needed to stand up. So I got up, and when I would have a contraction, I would just like walk around, and that was how I was getting relief. But then it started getting like really bad, and so I still didn't want to wake up my husband, and I just filled up the bathtub. I can't remember like what time this was, but I just remember thinking, just get to 3 a.m. and then you can go to the birth center and get some help. But right now you just have to do this on your own until 3 a.m. So I filled up my bathtub and got in there, and I did like get some relief by doing that. But then it was getting so bad that when a contraction would come on, I would have to stand up. So basically I was just having so much pressure like between my legs that it was just so painful to like sit down or even like lay down. So anyway, when I'm in the tub, like every time a contraction is coming on, I'm having to like stand up, and I was starting to get nervous that like I might like slip and fall or something. So I ended up like coming in and waking up my husband and saying like, okay, I need you to come in the bathroom and help me. And so I was kind of like explaining to him like this is a lot more painful than I was expecting, and I also like feel like I should be going to the birth center now. And this was probably around like maybe like 1:30 or 2 in the morning. And so I remember he asked me like, on a scale of 1 to 10, like how painful is it? And like I did not answer him because I didn't want to say that I was already at like level 10 pain, just because I knew this was gonna go on for a while longer and I just couldn't imagine how much worse it could get. So we called the midwife and I told her, I don't know if I'm just being dramatic, but I really feel like things are picking up and I need to come in now. And so she said, okay, well, we can absolutely meet up at the birth center, but just so you know, if I check you and you're still in early labor, like you might have to go home and then come back later. So at this point, I'm kind of like, should we go now or not? Because I really didn't want to have to like come back home, but I just decided to go. And I didn't tell my husband this, but in my head, I had my mind made up that if she said that I had to go back home, I was gonna make my husband just take me to the hospital, because I knew there was no way I was gonna be able to come back home and just like wait it out any longer. So we get to the birth center and she checks me and I was dilated to a 5. And when she told me, she almost like, I felt like she thought that wasn't like a very far progression, but to me, I was like so thrilled to be at a 5, because like the 2 weeks prior I was only at a 1 and then a 1.5, so like I wasn't dilating at all. So I was like thrilled to be at a 5 because I felt like things were really moving along. So she just kind of observed me as I went through a couple of contractions and she was timing them herself, and she said, okay, I think you should stay because your contractions are 2 minutes apart. And I was like, heck yes, let's do this. And so that is when everything started, and that was at 3 in the morning when we like finally got to the birth center. Okay, so at this point the midwife suggested that I lay on the bed to try to get some rest in between the contractions. So I did that for probably 1 contraction and I got right back up and I told her, I cannot sit down and I cannot lay down. Like there is so much pressure between my legs that I just have to be standing. And so she explained to me that since my water had broken, there was no like cushion between like, I guess the baby's head and my pelvic floor. So she was like, that pressure is not gonna go away. So we're gonna have to come up with like positions and techniques for you to kind of like embrace that feeling and like not identify it as unbearable pain, because she was like, it's not going away. It's gonna be there until you have your baby. So I was like, oh my gosh, how am I gonna do this? So the next thing we did was get in the shower, and I sat on a birth ball, which, I mean, it still wasn't comfortable, but it's better than sitting on like a hard surface. And so I was sitting on the ball, and then Kevin was like spraying my back with hot water. So I feel like we were in this position like for a while because it was actually giving me some relief. So I would just sit in there and he would spray my back, and then when I would get a contraction, I would like take the shower head from him and spray my belly, and then he would like squeeze my hips and push on my back. So we did that for a while, and then they suggested that I sit on the toilet with like a squatty potty. So I feel like this is a very common thing that people do during childbirth to help like dilate further. I think a lot of midwives actually call the toilet like the dilation station. So I did that for a while, and that like did not feel good. And so then the next thing we did was get in bed, and I laid on my side with the peanut ball in between my legs. And I remember that was like absolutely killer. And I kept saying like, I don't want to do this anymore. And they just kept saying, you have to. I mean, they weren't like forcing me to do anything, but they knew what I needed to do to like keep progressing. And so I did that for a while, And then I also laid on the bed like on my forearms and my knees. And so basically they just told me like, keep doing these until you literally cannot like do it anymore. And then they kept saying like getting in the tub would be like my reward for doing all of these things, because if you get in the tub like too early, it can kind of like slow things down if you like, I guess, get too relaxed. So they didn't want me to like get in there too early. And I also like didn't really want to, because ideally I wanted to have a water birth. And so I was like, I kind of want to like get in there at the last minute, but at the same time, like I knew that was gonna feel the best. So anyway, like we finally got in the tub, and I wrote that this is where time really starts to blur. So I feel like this is the point where I like kind of can't remember everything. And so there was like a big clock right in front of me in the tub, and even though like I don't know how long I was in there or like what the times were, I just remember like seeing the time and being like, okay, it's this time, I bet I'll have my baby at, you know, like 3 hours later or something. And then like 3 hours would pass and I would look at the clock and I would be like, oh my gosh, I'm not even close to having my baby. And then I would just like keep going through that cycle and just feeling like this baby is never gonna come out. So yeah, at this point I was like starting to get really discouraged, and this is where like I had a total negative mindset. So this is a part of my birth where I started to feel like, did I have a good birth experience? And I did. Like now that I've like thought through it all, like I did have a good experience and I'm very happy with it. But in the moment, in this part, I was so negative. So yeah, this part like I'm not gonna get into in this video because I will start crying, but if you want to kind of like read what was going through my mind and like what I was like thinking and stuff, you can like read my blog post. But yeah, basically like I was just in that tub for hours and hours, and they did offer me nitrous oxide. So with that, I would inhale it during the contraction, and it didn't like take away the pain, but all it did was kind of like relax my mind. So it kind of, I guess, took the edge off. And so I did that for a while, but I felt like it was making me kind of sick. And at one point I like kind of like fell to the side, and I mean I caught myself, but I like caught myself kind of hard. And I remember the midwife being like, I don't know, she asked me like something like if I was dizzy maybe, and I was like, oh no, I just fell asleep. And so then I was like, I don't want to use this anymore because it's just like making me feel like really weird. And so yeah, I don't know if I liked that or not, but I'm sure it helped, but in the moment it didn't feel like it was helping at all. Oh, and then I forgot to mention this, but because my labor was taking so long, we basically had like 2 different shifts of nurses and midwives. So I think in total there were probably like 6 or 7 people helping me, and I honestly started to get kind of confused on like who was a midwife, who was a nurse, and who was like a tech. So anyway, like whatever, there were all these people helping me, and sometimes I refer to them as a midwife, sometimes I refer to them as a nurse. Like I don't really know exactly what their roles were, but they were all like incredible. Like I loved them all so much. So anyway, at some point while I'm in the tub, after I was like doing the nitrous oxide and said I didn't want that anymore, someone checked me, and at this point they could feel his head, but I also had a cervical lip, and this I like completely forgot about. This is what I was saying as I was just talking to my husband before I started this video. I just remembered something about a cervical lip, and he was like, oh yeah, and we like talked all about it. And I just think that is so weird that I like completely forgot about that, because that is such like a huge part of why this was taking so long. So she checked me and she could feel the baby's head, but I had a cervical lip. So she explained that like as you dilate, you know, you want it to be like a full moon, and mine was like still kind of like a crescent moon, because like one side, I guess, of my cervix like wasn't dilating. And so because of that, like the baby like couldn't come through until that part of cervix like dilated. But I was just like really I don't know, like I feel like I pushed for so long because like I didn't really have this sensation to like push my baby out necessarily, but I just felt like I needed to push to like do something with like the pain I was experiencing during contractions. So I don't know if I caused the cervical lip by like pushing too soon or what, but she was like, okay, well, if you feel like you need to push, you can, and I can try to like, I guess like pull away the cervix or like get it out of the way. So we did that for a while and it just like was not working. Like he was not coming out and the cervical lip was not going away. And so at this point they were like, okay, I really think you need to get out of the tub and get on the bed because like this is just not working. And they thought maybe like the gravity of being like on the bed would help a little bit more. So I was kind of disappointed by that because I did want to have a water birth, but at this point I was like, whatever, anything to get this baby out, I will do whatever you tell me to. So we get out and I'm pushing on the bed for a while and still it seems like nothing is happening. And at this point I didn't like exactly ask to be transferred to the hospital, but I asked like if they thought that I should transfer, and I just kind of felt like I needed the epidural so that I could rest to get enough like stamina or energy to be able to push my baby out, because I was feeling like I couldn't push him out because I was just so tired and so like exhausted from like the whole night. And they just kind of told me like, you know, if you really feel like you need to do that, you can, but everything is normal, like you're doing a good job, everything's fine, like you don't need to transfer, like there's not an emergency or anything, like you can still do this here if you want to. And so I just kind of felt like no one was like making it easy for me to go and nobody was really like encouraging it, so I just kind of let it go. And then later, like after I had the baby, my husband told me that they told him like I could transfer to the hospital, but they said by the time I got registered and they got me like to a room, and if you want the epidural they apparently like have to like give you these fluids first, and they were like it could be like 3 hours or longer before she could even get the epidural, and at that point like it might be too late. And they said I could probably get the baby out sooner if I just stayed there. And so my husband told them like, okay, we're just gonna stay here, we're not gonna take her to the hospital. So he kind of like made the decision for me, which I am happy with like the decision that he made, because I was even thinking like, oh my gosh, going over to the hospital sounds horrible, like I was all wet and I'd have to change. And yeah, I'm glad that we ended up just staying and I didn't go. Okay, and then I also wrote here that throughout my entire pregnancy, I kind of thought I might deliver my baby at 11:11. So before I got pregnant, I was seeing the time 11:11 like every day. It seemed like anytime I looked at the clock, it was 11:11. And I kind of like took that as a sign that I was gonna get pregnant soon. So then like I ended up like getting pregnant, and throughout my pregnancy I just always saw the time 11:11. And so I just kind of thought like, how cool would that be if I had my baby at 11:11. So like I said, I kept seeing the time, seeing like the hours pass by, and as it was like getting closer to like 11, I was like, oh my gosh, am I seriously gonna have this baby at 11:11? So as I'm on the bed like pushing and it seems like nothing is happening, oh, I'm pretty sure I like intentionally pushed for 3 hours, even though I feel like I was kind of like pushing before that, but like the midwives actually like guiding me through pushing, and like, you know, my husband like holding my leg and everything, that was like 3 hours. So so anyway, whatever, I'm pushing, nothing's happening, and then the midwife says, oh, it's 11:11, make a wish. And I just thought, oh my gosh, I'm gonna like go past 11:11, like I can't believe I still have not had this baby. So once she said that, I just gave the biggest push ever, and like, oh gosh, I could cry thinking about it. But anyway, after that push, like everyone in the room started like cheering and just like telling me like that was my best push and to just keep going. And then I ended up having my baby at 11:38. So he was born totally healthy. He started crying right away. And when they gave him to me and put him on my chest, like he cried for like a couple seconds, but then he was like totally calm and he was just like looking right at me. And I was just like, oh my God, I can't believe it's over. Like, I can't believe that just happened. Like, that was insane. So in a lot of like natural birth stories that I've watched, a lot of women say that like their body just kind of like naturally pushed out their baby, and that was like not the situation for me at all. Like I was having to push with everything in me to get him out, and I don't know if that's because of like the cervical lip or what, but yeah, like it was the hardest thing I had ever done. And I definitely felt the ring of fire, which is like when your skin is like stretching to get the baby's head out. So I feel like I felt that for probably like 10 minutes, and I just remember being like saying how much it was hurting. And like the midwives are so funny because like this is their job, they do it every day. But I remember like just saying like how much it was hurting, and the midwife is just like, oh yeah, that's the ring of fire. And like, I don't know, it's just funny to think about. But yeah, I felt that. And then I don't know, I feel like it took like a couple, I mean more than a couple, like a lot of pushes to get his head out. And then once his head was out, like everything else like came out like pretty easily and quickly, I feel like. And also I was so surprised when he came out, he was like so clean. Like I was expecting him to have the like white vernix all over him, but he really like didn't have that much. And like he just looked like the perfect little baby, and he looked so cute. And even like all the nurses and midwives were like saying how cute he was, which like of course I'm sure they say that to everyone, but like I really think that like he was extra cute. I mean, he did have like a little bit of like a cone head just because he was like stuck in the birth canal for so long, but that like went away pretty quickly. So yeah, he was perfect. And then basically like the thing that really sucked is after you have your baby, you like think you're done, but then they have to come and like push on your stomach to make sure like the placenta comes out and everything like comes out, and that hurts really bad. And so like they had to do that for a while, and then you know they had to like make sure that I could get up and like go to the bathroom on my own and stuff. Oh, which by the way, you would think after pushing for so long that I would have tore, and I did not tear at all, which I am just so happy about, because that was like a really big fear of mine. And so I think honestly like the reason I didn't tear was because I drank so much of that red raspberry leaf tea. I also ate so many dates, and I also used this spray called Clariderm. I'll link it down below. It's from Young Living. It's like a natural spray, and I bought that because women were swearing that they used that and they didn't tear during childbirth. And yeah, I think it works. What's crazy is even with like no tearing or anything, it was still just so sore down there, and it would like still sting when I would pee for like a couple days, and it was just like super uncomfortable. So I can't imagine like if I did tear, like how much more painful that would be, because it was already like really not feeling good. Okay, so then after they were all finished like checking the baby out and checking me out and like getting us all cleaned and whatever, ready to go, one of the nurses said to me before she walked out the door, she was like, don't worry, it's always the hardest and the longest with the first one. The next time it'll be so much easier and go so much faster. And after she said that, I walked out the door, I looked at my husband and I just started bawling, and I was like, I am never doing this again. Like next time I'm for sure going to the hospital and getting the epidural. And I think like when I said that, my husband was like a little bit like, I don't want to say he was like disappointed, because like obviously he's like you know, do things however you want. But I think he was kind of shocked because like to him and to all of like the midwives and the nurses and everyone just kept saying like how beautiful the whole experience was and how amazing it was. But to me, like, I seriously just thought it was torture, honestly. And I feel like really sad saying that because like I wish that I thought it was like this magical, like beautiful experience, but like to me it just like was not. And that's definitely like not the fault of like the birth center at all. Like I loved being there, and I don't know, I guess just like when I think about if I want to do that again next time, I mean obviously like it's not gonna be for a while, and so I don't need to like be making this decision anytime like soon, but I just like don't know if I want to do it that way again or not. If I could guarantee that it wasn't gonna take as long next time and it actually wouldn't be as painful next time, then 100% I would like do that again. But I just cannot imagine like now that I know like putting myself through that again. So I don't know, part of me kind of wants to go to the hospital next time only so that I have the option to get the epidural if I feel like I need it. I feel like maybe if I had the epidural and I could have rested more, then maybe it would have been like a little bit more peaceful. I don't know. And of course there's like no way to know like how things would have gone if you would have done it like a different way, because again, my whole reason for wanting to do it this way was to avoid interventions. And so, you know, if I would have had any interventions, then you know, things could have gone differently. And I don't know, I mean, I'm happy with my experience just because like my baby is perfect and healthy, and that's really all that matters. But yeah, it's really like hard for me to think about like how I want to do it the next time. I will say though, I have nothing but amazing things to say about the birth center and like all of the people who helped us. And okay, so after we had the baby, like the maximum amount of time that you can stay there is 6 hours, and we did that. But I will say, like, I was really ready to get out of there and come home. I think we were at like 4 hours, and the nurse was like, why don't you and your husband like take a nap and I'll like hold your baby, which like, okay, normally I would be like, no way, I'm not like letting someone else hold our brand new baby while we both sleep. But seriously, like I just loved them so much that I like fully trusted her to do that. So I was like, okay, fine. So she had us like sleep for an hour, and then the last hour she just kind of like went over things we needed to do once we got home. So yeah, we were only there for 6 hours, but I was like ready to get out of there before the 6 hours was up. So that's another thing about going to the hospital. I'm like, I can't imagine being stuck there for like 24 hours after I have a baby. So I don't know, so much to think about, but those are just like my honest thoughts. So yeah, hopefully I covered everything. I feel like this whole story was like kind of jumbled, but honestly, like I said, I already like am having trouble like remembering parts of it. And also like now that I have a baby, like I fully have mom brain. Like the only thing I can think about is like his feeding schedule and just like what he needs. But I wanted to share this story now before I'm like too far gone, because I'm already thinking to myself like, oh, it wasn't that bad, it didn't hurt that bad, when I know it did. Like I know it was the worst pain ever, but like I already feel like it wasn't that bad, but it was. So anyway, that is my birth story, and I'm sure that you will all meet my baby at some point. I don't know like how much I'm going to feature him on my channel. Like I'm definitely wanting to do some like mom type videos, but I really don't want to like focus my videos around my baby. So he'll definitely like be in them at points, but I don't plan to share like a ton of information about him. But I did post some cute pictures of him over on my Instagram, so you can go follow me there if you want to see him. But thanks so much for watching, and if you're not subscribed yet, I would love if you would subscribe to my channel, and I'll be back with another video very soon.